From the moment we're born, we're taught how to behave, how to be good. Not good in the sense of virtue, but in the sense of acceptability. We quickly learn what earns us a smile, what makes people pull away, and what gets us praised or punished. And so, we adjust. We hide certain feelings. We push down questions we're not supposed to ask. We become experts at sensing what others want from us and giving it to them. You hid the parts that were too intense, too emotional, too different. You learned to laugh when you didn't find things funny. You said yes when everything inside you was begging for a no. You watered yourself down so you could fit in better. And over time, that compromise started to feel safe. The world didn't push back as much. People liked you. You got approval. But there's a cost to that kind of peace, because comfort isn't peace. Not real peace. Real peace doesn't require you to shrink. Real peace doesn't feel like something you earned by abandoning yourself. What you felt instead was relief, a temporary silence bought by betrayal of the self. And the deeper problem is this: after wearing that mask long enough, you stopped noticing it was even there. You didn't just act like the version of you others approved of. You started to believe you were that version. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because when you realize how much of yourself you've silenced, buried, or distorted, it shakes you. But there's also something freeing in it. Because something in you remembers. That small ache in your chest when you're alone. That quiet discomfort when everything seems fine. That's your real self trying to come back to life. It never died. It just got quiet. The soul doesn't vanish. It waits. Sometimes for years, sometimes for decades. And then, one day, something cracks, and you can't unsee what you've seen." Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But what happens when the life you're living isn't really yours? What if it's a performance built on fear, shaped by expectation and sustained by silence? Who are you performing for, and why? When you trace it back, it's often not even your voice you're obeying. It's the voice of a parent you wanted to please, a teacher you feared disappointing, a culture that told you what strength should look like. And those voices, though long gone, still echo. They still pull the strings unless you become aware of them. And here's the thing: awareness isn't always pleasant. In fact, it's often uncomfortable. It disrupts the routine. It confronts you with truths you'd rather ignore. But as Plato wrote, "The price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men." And the same goes for your inner world. The price you pay for ignoring your truth is to be ruled by your wounds. At first, it feels like breaking apart, like everything you knew about yourself is up for question. But that's not destruction, that's liberation. Because once you see the mask, you get to choose. You get to ask, do I still want to wear this? There's no quick fix, no shortcut. But there is something more valuable, an invitation, to meet yourself honestly, to listen to the parts of you you've silenced, to hold your contradictions instead of judging them. As Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, and self-knowledge isn't clean or easy. It's messy, raw, and deeply human. But once you begin that process, something shifts. You stop chasing approval. You stop begging the world to validate a version of you that isn't even real, and you begin to settle into something quieter, but infinitely stronger. A kind of freedom that can't be taken away, because it doesn't depend on anyone else's permission. And that's where peace starts. Not in perfection, but in truth, in wholeness, in no longer needing to perform. Carl Jung didn't call it self-sabotage. He called it the shadow, the part of you that holds everything you've pushed away, not because it was evil, but because somewhere along the way, someone made you believe it was unacceptable. That part of you that feels jealous when someone else shines. the part that gets angry when you're overlooked, the part that craves recognition but is too ashamed to admit it. It all lives there, quietly, waiting. And as long as you keep pretending those feelings don't exist, they grow stronger. You might think you're making rational choices, that you're just unlucky in relationships, or that stress makes you snap. But what if that wasn't true? What if those blow-ups, that stuckness, those moments you regret, weren't random at all? What if something within you was playing out the same old story over and over because you never stopped to listen to it? That's your shadow. It's not some abstract idea. It's the buried part of you still looking for expression. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That one sentence explains more pain than most people realize. Because we walk through life thinking we're in control. But in reality, most of us are acting out emotional blueprints we never consciously agreed to. You find yourself drawn to the same kind of people, the ones who don't see you, the ones who take more than they give. Or maybe you keep playing the savior, trying to fix everyone, hoping they'll finally stay. These aren't just bad choices. These are shadows in motion. They're the patterns we attract when a part of us is still trying to solve something that was never healed. And when it happens, we say things like, "Why do I always do this?" Or "What's wrong with me?" But those aren't the right questions. The better question is, what am I not willing to feel? Because whatever you're not willing to feel is usually what controls you. The shadow isn't just made of rage or grief or shame. It's also your hunger for love, your buried creativity, your silenced voice, your unapologetic truth. You may have locked it away to survive, but now you're still living as if the war is going on, and that's the real tragedy, when the danger is gone, but the armor stays on. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But knowing yourself isn't just about the polished parts. It's about turning toward what you've rejected and saying, "I see you. You belong here too." That's not weakness. That's wholeness. The longer you avoid it, the more the shadow distorts your relationships, your goals, your sense of self. You'll blame other people. You'll call it timing. You'll label it as just being how life is. But underneath it all, the truth doesn't stop whispering. And here's the shift. The shadow doesn't want to ruin you. It wants to be integrated. It wants to be acknowledged, not denied. Because inside those uncomfortable emotions is the raw energy that, if claimed, can become confidence, clarity, and power. You don't fight the shadow. You meet it. You sit with the discomfort instead of numbing it. You track the patterns instead of just reacting. You get curious instead of judgmental. Plato once wrote, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." And he wasn't talking about dominating your feelings. He was talking about understanding them. That's when you start to reclaim your choices, not because you've become perfect or emotionless, but because you're finally awake. You recognize when your shadow is being triggered. You catch it before it takes over, and slowly you begin to steer your own life, not by force, but by awareness. True freedom doesn't come from avoiding what's hidden. It comes from turning toward it and saying, "I'm ready now." Because when you bring light to the parts you once feared, you stop being driven by them. And that's when you finally take the wheel back. You say you want peace, but peace doesn't grow where truth is buried. You can repeat affirmations, meditate, surround yourself with soft lighting and calm music, but none of it lasts if you're still hiding from yourself. Denial isn't healing, it's just delay. And the more you delay, the more pressure builds behind the mask you've learned to wear so well. You say you want love, but how can anyone truly love you when you don't show them who you really are? You give people the curated version, the agreeable one, the one who never makes things messy or complicated. And while that may earn you acceptance, it's a hollow kind, because deep down, you know, it's not you they're choosing, it's your performance. You want clarity, you want to feel aligned. But every time discomfort shows up, you look away. You distract yourself, you scroll, you overthink, you escape into plans and to-do lists, telling yourself that productivity will somehow fix the ache. But clarity only comes when you sit with the mess, when you actually feel the thing you've been trying to outrun. You say you want growth, but growth is born from tension, from breakdowns, from staring your patterns in the face and saying, "I'm not doing this anymore." And most people avoid that moment at all costs, not because they're weak, but because it's hard. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And you can feel the truth of that in how quickly we reach for distraction when we're finally alone. This is the quiet war inside, between who you really are and who you've had to become to be accepted. That version of you who learned to keep things smooth, to suppress the inconvenient emotions, to act strong even when you're falling apart, that version didn't come from nowhere, it came from survival. But survival mode isn't meant to be permanent, and the longer you live in it, the more disconnected you become. That disconnection doesn't always look dramatic. It often looks like anxiety that won't go away, no matter how much you try to calm down. It looks like burnout from doing all the right things and still feeling empty. It looks like numbness that creeps in even when your life looks good on paper. These aren't flaws, they're signals. As if your body, your mind, your very spirit is waving a flag and saying, "You've drifted too far from yourself." Plato said, "The worst form of injustice is pretended justice." And something similar happens internally. When you pretend you're okay, when you pretend you're aligned, when you pretend you're whole, your inner world suffers an injustice because it knows better. It knows what's been avoided. It knows what still needs to be heard. The ego isn't the villain here. It's just afraid. Afraid that if you show too much, you'll be rejected. That if you let go of control, you'll fall apart. So it clings, it edits, it polishes, it presents a version of life that feels more manageable. But that version also traps you, because it's not built on truth, it's built on fear. And the price of that illusion is high. You trade your depth for approval. You trade authenticity for certainty. You trade freedom for safety. But what if you didn't have to? What if peace wasn't about controlling everything, but allowing everything to be seen? Socrates said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." And maybe that's where it all starts. Not with fixing, not with performing, but with noticing, with being honest, with admitting what hurts, what scares you, what still needs healing. Because once you tell the truth to yourself, the war begins to end. And in that ending, something softer begins, something more grounded, not the kind of peace that's silent because it's suppressed, but the kind that's quiet because it's real, because finally there's no one left to pretend to be. The world taught you how to behave, how to blend in, how to speak when spoken to, smile when you're hurting, and never ask for too much. It taught you that being good meant being easy to manage. That love is something you earn by staying agreeable. But Carl Jung didn't tell you to be good. He told you to be whole. And there's a big difference. To be whole means to welcome all of who you are, not just the polished parts that get praise, but the rough edges too. The pride that shows up when you succeed, the pain that lingers when you're alone, the strength you rarely acknowledge, the shame you try to bury. All of it is you, and when you cut pieces of yourself out just to be accepted, you don't become more lovable. you become less you. Fragmentation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it just feels like a low hum of emptiness, like you're living slightly outside your own life, going through the motions, nodding at the right times, saying what's expected, yet feeling like a stranger behind your own eyes. That's not peace. That's imprisonment. Plato once said, "The worst of all deceptions is self-deception," and he was right. The moment you start lying to yourself about what you want, what you need, who you are, you break that inner connection. And over time, that disconnection starts to hurt. It shows up as exhaustion you can't explain, as resentment that keeps building, as joy that feels just out of reach, no matter how much you accomplish. The first step toward freedom isn't a massive leap. It's a decision, a quiet, honest moment where you say, "I'm done pretending." You stop performing for applause that doesn't satisfy. You stop contorting yourself to meet expectations that drain you. You stop chasing the comfort of being liked and start reaching for the deeper satisfaction of being real. Yes, it will cost you. Some people won't know how to handle your truth. Some will back away when you stop filtering your feelings, when you stop saying what they want to hear. But those people were never truly seeing you in the first place, and the ones who stay, they'll be choosing you, not the polished version, not the edited mask. You. There's something sacred about being seen in your fullness. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But knowing yourself isn't a thought experiment. It's a lived experience. And it means facing the uncomfortable things too. The parts of yourself you were told to hide, the emotions you've been suppressing for years. It means holding all of that in your hands and saying, "This is part of me, and I'm not ashamed." You don't become whole by denying your darkness. You become whole by integrating it, by making space for it, by learning from it. Because inside that darkness is often the very thing you've been searching for, your voice, your power, your depth. Jung called this the path of individuation, a process of becoming who you really are, not who the world told you to be. That path isn't easy, but it's real, and once you begin walking it, the need to pretend fades, the need to control every perception loosens. You stop living from fear and start moving from truth. And that, quietly and steadily, becomes the foundation for a life that's not just successful, but authentic. In the end, you realize you were never too much. You were just never fully seen. And now, you finally have the courage to be seen. As you are, whole. The shadow isn't there to destroy you, it's there to complete you. Most people hear the word shadow and immediately think of something dangerous, something to be avoided or eliminated. We associate it with weakness, shame, guilt, or behavior we're not proud of. But the shadow, as Carl Jung described it, is not your enemy. It's the part of you that was cast aside when you learned how to survive. It's your rejected thoughts, your hidden impulses, your unspoken emotions. It's everything you were taught not to be, but still are. It holds your jealousy, yes, but also your hidden ambition, your anger, sure, but also your deep sense of justice, your fear, but also your intuition, your sensitivity, but also your creativity. You see, what we bury doesn't disappear, it waits. And while it waits, it grows stronger in the dark. When you look away from your shadow, it doesn't go dormant. It acts out. Quietly, unconsciously, it becomes the voice in your head that whispers self-doubt. It becomes the pattern that keeps you stuck in the same arguments, the same heartbreaks, the same fears. It shapes your choices while convincing you they're rational. It makes you mistake your coping mechanisms for personality traits. And the more you ignore it, the more chaos it creates. But when you stop running from it, when you turn toward it honestly, without flinching, everything changes. You start to see the raw material your shadow carries. What once showed up as explosions of anger now shows up as clarity, directness, boundaries. What once felt like envy turns into drive, a desire to create your own version of what you admire. What used to feel like fear begins to sharpen into alertness, into instinct. That's the power of bringing the unconscious into the light. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And fate, when you're unaware of your inner world, becomes a loop. You start to think, why does this keep happening to me? But what's really happening is that your shadow is living through you, acting through your blind spots, repeating what was never healed. And that's where individuation begins. Jung didn't see healing as becoming perfect. He saw it as becoming real. He said, "I'd rather be whole than good." And that's the essence of this journey, not to be some flawless version of yourself, but to be fully and fearlessly you. Most people spend their lives trying to feel free. They chase peace, love, happiness, fulfillment. But they do it through denial, through performance, through constantly editing themselves to stay liked, to stay safe, to stay inside the invisible lines society draws around acceptable. But that kind of safety is a cage. You get good at pretending, you master the performance, but behind closed doors you feel numb, you feel disconnected, you wonder why nothing ever feels real. The truth is, freedom isn't something you find, it's something you remember, because you were born whole. Before anyone told you who to be, what to hide, or what to be ashamed of, you were already free, fully expressed, curious, bold, sensitive, intuitive. But then, little by little, you were told, that part of you, too much. This part, not enough. That emotion, unattractive. That truth, inconvenient. So you split. You buried parts of yourself just to belong. And at the time, it was survival. It made sense. But now you're carrying a fragmented self and wondering why you feel like something's always missing. Plato once said, "The soul takes nothing with her to the next world but her education and her upbringing." What you absorb, especially when you're young, becomes your internal blueprint. It becomes the foundation of your shadow, and until you confront it, until you examine it, it becomes the silent architect of your life. This is why emotional patterns repeat even when your circumstances change. You can leave the toxic relationship, find a better job, move to a new city, but if your shadow isn't integrated, the same core wounds find new ways to show up. They dress in different clothes, speak in different voices, but the story is always the same. So what does integration look like? It's not some grand event. It's subtle. It's the moment you catch yourself spiraling in self-doubt, and instead of collapsing, you get curious. You ask, whose voice is that really? It's the moment you feel triggered, and instead of lashing out, you pause and ask what that anger is trying to protect. It's when you finally stop apologizing for having needs, for feeling deeply, for being human. Integration is when you become the observer of your shadow, not its puppet. It doesn't mean you won't feel fear or envy or insecurity anymore. It means those feelings no longer get to control your decisions. They don't hijack your relationships. They don't keep you stuck. You recognize them for what they are: old signals, echoes, leftovers from a story that no longer serves you. And with that awareness, you take your power back. Socrates said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." But building the new begins with understanding the old, not avoiding it, not skipping over it with a list of goals and daily affirmations. You can't heal what you're still afraid to look at. You can't grow into your future if you're still being run by your past. Integration doesn't make you perfect. It makes you honest. And honesty, especially with yourself, is the foundation of real peace. When you stop lying about who you are, when you stop hiding parts of yourself just to be accepted, you finally feel what it's like to exhale. You move through the world with less tension because you're no longer performing. You speak with less hesitation because your words are rooted in truth. You love with less fear because you're no longer terrified of being fully seen. That's real freedom, the kind that can't be taken from you because it was never dependent on anyone else. It wasn't something you had to chase. It was always inside you, buried beneath the roles, the expectations, the fear, waiting to be remembered. Aristotle said, "Happiness depends upon ourselves, but not the version of ourselves we pretend to be. The real one, the one we've been running from, the one that holds both the light and the dark, the strength and the softness, the logic and the longing. And once you meet that version, the search ends. Not because life becomes easy, but because you no longer feel lost in it. You know who you are. And even when you forget, you now have a map back to yourself. That map is the shadow, not a curse, not a flaw, a compass, a reminder, a necessary mirror. Freedom isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of wholeness. And now that you understand what's been calling from within you all along, now that you've seen the truth, you can't unknow it. You're not broken, you're just divided. And now, you're coming home. You were never missing pieces. You were just waiting to remember all of who you are. If something in this spoke to you, don't stop here. There's another video waiting for you right on the screen that continues this journey inward.